The Cold of Betrayal. Part 1. Cracks in the Ice Mirror. There are moments when time stands still. For me, such a moment was that winter morning when I saw two sets of tracks on the untouched snow, leading to the Falcon's Eye viewing platform. That day, Montana greeted me with a piercing wind, as if whispering, "Ryan, watch your step carefully." 36 years on this earth, 10 of which I spent pulling people out of mountain crevasses, taught me to read tracks. Male and female too close to each other for casual fellow travelers, leading to where no one should be at this time of year. I didn't want to follow them. Part of me, the one that still believed in coincidences, begged to turn around and leave. But my left leg, permanently crippled by an avalanche in the Himalayas, began to ache, foretelling trouble. It never made a mistake. I moved silently along the tracks, feeling the snow treacherously creaking under my boots, the only sound amidst the deafening winter silence. The glass dome of the observation point loomed ahead, a crystal bubble on the edge of a 1,000-foot precipice. In summer, tourists paid $50 each to take photos on its transparent floor. Now it was empty, closed to visitors until the official opening of the season. But it wasn't empty. Listen, Ray won't even suspect. The voice of Megan, my wife of 7 years, sounded unfamiliar, playful, seductive. When he's immersed in his reports and calculations, he doesn't notice the obvious. Now is the perfect time. He's invested all his money in this new project. And the insurance documents. That deep baritone belonging to Aiden Frost, who had appeared at the resort 3 weeks ago with impeccable recommendations and a reputation as a brilliant meteorological analyst, made my blood freeze in my veins. "Don't worry, handsome. I've been handling all the finances for 5 years. He'll sign without looking. He's used to trusting me with everything related to numbers." The rustle of clothes, a quiet stifled laugh, the sound of a kiss. Like a figure skater performing a perfect pirouette, I turned and moved away from the glass dome, feeling an emptiness growing inside. 10 years of professional rescue operations taught me to maintain icy calm when the world around me crumbles, not to act on emotions, to calculate every step, to breathe slowly and deeply, even when there's almost no oxygen left. I inhaled the frosty air, feeling it burn my lungs. So this is what betrayal looks like, I thought, limping toward the administrative building of the Alpine Star Resort. My resort, my life, my dream, built on compensation from a rescue operation where I lost a part of myself, not just a leg, but also the belief that a human life can be saved at any cost. Evening of the same day. Megan had set the table for a romantic dinner. Candles, wine, her favorite black backless dress. In the candlelight, her face seemed so familiar and simultaneously completely foreign, like a painting you've been examining for years, and then suddenly notice that the eyes are painted with the wrong expression. "This Aiden is a real treasure for our resort." Her voice rang with enthusiasm as she served me a steak. "His weather forecasting methodology is phenomenal. Have you noticed how accurate his snow cover calculations are? And his ideas for safety on the new bridge are simply revolutionary." I slowly sipped my whiskey, studying the woman I once rescued from an icy crevasse. Back then, 5 years ago, she looked at me like a god descended from heaven. Now her eyes sparkled, but not for me. "And he also suggested an amazing insurance scheme," continued Megan, nervously fidgeting with her wedding ring, a new habit that had appeared in the last month. "We could significantly increase our coverage, in case of, unexpected situations." "Yes, Aiden seems very competent." I deliberately paused, observing her reaction. "I think I'll trust you both to handle the insurance. I rely on your judgment." Her smile shone brighter than the candles, but deep in her pupils flickered something predatory. Or did I imagine it? Late at night, when our mountain home sank into silence, I sat in my office, going through Aiden Frost's documents. Minor inconsistencies, slight errors in dates, details that would only be noticed by someone who had verified dossiers before rescue operations in the world's most dangerous mountain systems for 10 years. I dialed Lucas, an old friend from the rescue service, who now worked at a private detective agency. Lucas, remember you said I could turn to you anytime. I have someone who needs to be checked out. Aiden Frost. I'm particularly interested in his previous places of employment, anything related to ski resorts and accidents. Outside, the wind howled, twisting snow into bizarre spirals. I watched their hypnotic dance, feeling a hurricane building within me. Soon it would break out. But first, observation, analysis, preparation, like in the good old days in the mountains. Part 2, Deep Currents. The phone pierced the night silence like a flashlight beam through pitch darkness. The display showed 3:17, and the caller's name promised nothing good at such an hour. Lucas Stone, a man who only calls when he discovers something you'd rather not know. Listen carefully, Ryan. His voice sounded tense, like an alpine rope stretched to its limit. What I've dug up about your Frost, it's worse than we thought. I silently rose from bed, trying not to wake Megan. Her measured breathing seemed as false as everything in our life these past weeks. Limping, I went down to my office, where a glass of bourbon awaited me, a faithful companion to bad news since the days when I pulled people out of snowy hell. Over the last 5 years, 4 ski resorts declared bankruptcy after fatal accidents. All were linked to insurance payouts in the tens of millions. And you know what all cases have in common? A certain climate conditions expert or consulting engineer would appear about 2 months before each incident. Different names, but the handwriting is the same. The memory of the overheard conversation at the glass dome burned my consciousness. Insurance, signatures. The puzzle was beginning to form a terrifying picture. Sending you the files, continued Lucas. And something else interesting. Your meteorologist is ex-military, but not an ordinary soldier. He served in a private military company called Ice and Fire. Heard of it? I had heard. Very unsavory rumors circulated about this organization. Secret operations, eliminations, sabotage. All things that disgusted me even in the hardest days of rescue service. Thanks, friend. I rubbed my temples, feeling an increasing headache. I'll be on alert. Be careful, Ryan. These guys from Ice and Fire are psychopaths. For them, a human life is just a line in accounting. They work for results. The insurance payouts are enormous. The morning was crystal clear, like polished ice. The resort was preparing for the grand opening of a new extreme trail with a suspension bridge, my brainchild, into which I had invested all my savings and soul. Work was buzzing everywhere. Workers installing festive installations, instructors rehearsing demonstrations. Aiden, impeccable in his snow-white meteorologist suit, was directing the preparation of forecasting systems. Ryan, he waved cheerfully, and the sun reflected off his expensive watch. Want to take a look at the weather forecast for the opening? I've prepared something special. I looked at him with new eyes. Now behind the professional smile, I saw the calculating gaze of a predator choosing its prey. Behind the smooth movements, years of training not in meteorological laboratories, but in mercenary training camps. Sure, show me. I forced myself to smile. The game had begun, and I had to play my part perfectly. Aiden unfolded weather condition maps on the snowmobile hood. His fingers, I only now noticed the characteristic calluses from handling weapons, flew over trail diagrams and pressure zones. Here we expect ideal conditions for the opening. He pointed to an area near the most dangerous part of the trail, the suspension bridge over the gorge. We'll invite the press, investors, influential guests. It will be an unforgettable event. No doubt, I muttered, noting how his finger lingered on the bridge structure, the very place where any malfunction would be fatal. By noon, the resort was buzzing like a disturbed beehive. The staff was delighted with the charismatic Aiden, who seemed to be everywhere, breathing life into the resort's atmosphere. He joked with instructors, gave valuable recommendations to technicians, charmed administrators with his professional confidence. "He's just incredible," chirped a young receptionist. "So knowledgeable, attentive, and not married, it seems. Do you know?" "I have no idea, Sunshine." I held back a bitter smirk. "But yes, definitely a professional in his field. A professional killer and fraudster." After lunch, I noticed Megan slip into the technical department. 15 minutes later, Aiden emerged, casually stuffing some papers into the inner pocket of his jacket. I quietly slipped into the room. Megan was standing by the copying machine, gathering laid-out documents, insurance policies, technical specifications, emergency system diagrams. The blush on her cheeks and slightly trembling hands betrayed her excitement. "Oh, Ryan," she flinched, noticing me. "You scared me. I was just preparing documents for the insurance company. Aiden advised updating our policies before the opening, just in case." Her eyes avoided my gaze. "We need to insure for the maximum, although I'm sure everything will go perfectly." "Sensible," I nodded. "Safety first. It's good that you're checking these papers. Mistakes in such matters could cost us everything." In the evening, I again slipped into the technical department. In the trash can, I found crumpled sketches of the suspension bridge with some markings. I smoothed out one of the sheets. Red crosses on the nodal attachments caught my eye, as if someone had calculated maximum loads at the weakest points of the structure. The Avalanche Lounge was a favorite resting place for technical staff. I settled at the counter, pretending to be completely absorbed in the contents of my glass. At the next table, mechanics were discussing the upcoming opening. "Strange, these new recommendations," grumbled Victor, the chief engineer. "In 20 years of work, I've never heard such a thing. Reduce the strength coefficient of the bridge attachments by 20%. It's pure madness. He claims it will help the structure better withstand wind loads and resonance. Complete nonsense." I tried to object. "Keep it down," interrupted his partner. "The boss trusts this Frost. That means he knows what he's doing. Our job is small, we follow instructions." A chill ran down my spine. Weakened attachments, a complex section of the trail, a crowd of people at the opening, insurance. The picture was ominous, even my heart, hardened in rescue operations, constricted. At that moment, Aiden entered the lounge. He wasn't alone, he was accompanied by Megan, laughing at some joke of his. They didn't notice me in the dim light of the bar, taking a far table. I watched as my wife leaned toward this man, how her hand briefly touched his wrist, how they whispered, periodically looking around. From the side, they appeared to be a couple in love. But I knew. I was looking at two predators planning their prey. The phone in my pocket silently vibrated. A message from Lucas. "Found something else. Remember that case in the Alps 3 years ago? Your meteorologist had a direct relationship to it. The insurance was 30 million. Broken lives, crippled destinies, all for money." I drank my whiskey, feeling not rage but cold determination ignite within me. In the mountains, I learned one thing. The most dangerous thing is not the avalanche but those who trigger it. Part 3. Mirror Ice. After the conversation with Lucas, sleep fled from me like a frightened deer from a predator. I sat in my home office, turning an untouched glass of whiskey in my hands. On the table lay our wedding photograph, a moment when Megan's eyes shone with such adoration that it took my breath away. I remembered that day down to the smallest detail. How her thin fingers trembled as she put the ring on me. How her hair smelled of winter freshness and alpine flowers. How her lips whispered, "Forever," between kisses. Now those same lips whispered words of love to another man. "When did I lose you, Megan?" My voice sounded unusually hoarse in the night silence. "What drives you, love or money, or love for money?" From the bedroom came her even breathing. She slept peacefully, too peacefully for someone whose soul should have been torn between love and betrayal. Lucas said that in each of Aiden's scams, there was a woman in love who became a puppet in his cynical game. The morning meeting began exactly at 9. I watched as Aiden, impeccable in his professional image, presented a new meteorological forecasting system for safety. His movements were precise, like those of a dancer or a fighter. Megan sat nearby, with one leg crossed over the other, nervously tapping a pencil against a notepad, a habit that appeared in moments of great anxiety. As you can see, Aiden spoke softly but confidently, the new system takes into account all the microclimatic features of the region. We will significantly reduce the likelihood of unpredictable weather phenomena. This will ensure the highest level of safety. Amazing, exhaled Megan, and in her voice rang that same admiration that once was meant only for me. Isn't it, dear? I slowly rose from my seat. The pain in my leg reminded me of itself again, a sure signal that I was preparing for something dangerous. So impressive, I allowed a sincere smile to touch my lips, that I think Aiden should go with you to Helena, honey. You'll help Megan with the technical details of the presentation for investors, won't you? Silence reigned in the room. Megan and Aiden exchanged quick glances, a mixture of surprise and poorly concealed jubilation. Are you sure? Megan tried to maintain a businesslike tone, but her voice betrayed excitement. I could manage on my own, but if you think it's necessary. Of course you could, I approached my wife, limping slightly. But this is Aiden's project. No one better than him could explain all the technical nuances to investors. Besides, I squeezed her shoulder encouragingly, it will be easier to convince them together. Your communication skills combined with Aiden's expertise, the perfect combination. I believe in you. I would be happy to help. I have a lot of work here, of course, but I can't refuse. Aiden tried to speak impassively, but anticipation flickered in his eyes. If Megan doesn't mind. Of course she doesn't mind, I smiled even wider. Right, darling. When everyone dispersed, Megan lingered. Her hands trembled as she approached me. Ryan, if you suspect something. She began, but I interrupted her by pulling her close. Everything is fine, dear. I don't suspect you of anything. I trust you completely. And Aiden, too. You make an excellent team. She froze in my arms, and for a moment it seemed to me that she wanted to say something important. But the moment passed, and Megan silently left the office. All day I watched them prepare for the trip. Their anxious glances, seemingly accidental touches, quiet conversations in secluded corners, all this told a story not so much of criminal conspiracy as of desperate, blind passion. Or was it just a skillful imitation? I saw how Megan reached for Aiden, like a plant towards a light source, how her eyes came alive with his every appearance, how she involuntarily fixed her hair when he approached. Everything looked so natural that for a moment, I doubted my suspicions. In the evening, when both had left to prepare for tomorrow's trip, my phone vibrated. A message from an informant at the insurance company made my heart skip a beat. Megan had recently changed the insurance terms. In case of a catastrophic incident, all compensation, $40 million, was to be paid directly to her as the sole beneficiary. God, Megan, I whispered, looking at the night mountains through the panoramic window. What have you allowed yourself to be dragged into? The call from Lucas was the final piece of the puzzle. Ryan found one more detail. In each of his scams there was a woman in love. Can you guess what happened to them after getting the money? I could guess. Oh, I understood too well what happens to pawns when they fulfill their function. But now I had the advantage. A whole day to study all the details of the impending catastrophe while these two would be in Helena, thinking they had me wrapped around their finger. Part 4: Frozen Truths. I stood by the panoramic window of my office, watching Megan's silver SUV disappear around the bend of the mountain road. My wife and Aiden set off for Helena to meet with investors and insurers. 36 hours. That's how much time I had to unravel their scheme and prepare a countermove. That's exactly why I suggested they go together. Well, let's see what you've planned, I muttered, heading to the technical building. In the empty building, my steps echoed loudly off walls decorated with photographs of smiling skiers and snowboarders. Bitter irony. A place I created for people's joy and happiness had turned into a backdrop for someone's dark plans. In Aiden's office, perfect order reigned, folders arranged alphabetically, surfaces pristinely clean. I smirked. Military training always manifests in such details. I'm the same way 7 years after the Himalayan incident, and I still fold my socks in pairs and align my boots to a ruler. Documentation for the new extreme trail lay in a blue folder with silver embossing. As I leafed through the pages, my professional eye caught details that formed a frightening mosaic. Aiden was a virtuoso in his field. Each change looked logically justified, each modification accompanied by impeccable technical calculations. Clever bastard, I whistled, examining the diagrams through a magnifying glass. You're a real artist at creating controlled catastrophes. The plan was flawless. The accident was supposed to look like the result of an unforeseen combination of weather conditions and technical failure. But what struck me most was the carefully calculated place of the incident, minimizing possible human casualties. Aiden wasn't aiming for mass tragedy. He only needed money. A couple of injured tourists whose bodies would be extracted from under the bridge debris over the gorge would suffice, and the job would be done. The next few hours I spent on the upper section of the new trail. The piercing wind crept under my clothes, but I methodically checked each node, each fastening. When I discovered the critical point, the place where the modified attachment parameters would not withstand a certain combination of wind load and weight, I was hit by a sharp sense of déjà vu. It was the same in the Himalayas when I noticed the first signs of an approaching avalanche minutes before it came down. Then I managed to save a group of tourists but lost my own leg. What would happen this time? History repeats itself, I muttered, photographing the altered attachment nodes. Only now the danger is not in nature, it sleeps in my bed. Returning to the office, I discovered that Megan, in her haste, had forgotten to log out of her email account on the home computer. Casting aside doubts, I opened her correspondence. The emails in the personal folder revealed the true scale of betrayal. Dear Mom asterisk, you always said I deserved better, that I was wasting my best years with this lame-legged hero who thinks more about his mountains than about me. I finally understood what you meant. After what is about to happen, I can start a new life. It will look like an accident. They're not uncommon in the mountains. Ryan will lose his business and won't even understand that he's been fooled. As for Aiden, he offered me a part in this affair and considers me a naive fool who succumbed to his charms. I play along as best I can, but his hopes of getting a share of the insurance are as stupid as his belief in my love. Only I will come out ahead. As soon as everything is done, you and I will take that world trip we've always dreamed of, I promise. So that's how it is. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a strange emptiness. My wife turned out to be much more calculating than I had assumed. It turns out that Aiden didn't seduce her for the scam, but she herself planned to use him as a scapegoat, so that later he would be the only culprit in the tragedy, and she the sole beneficiary. Well, that makes playing this game all the more interesting, I muttered, taking a sip of long cold coffee. For the first time in a long while, I felt the familiar thrill of excitement, the same feeling I experienced before complex rescue operations. Only now I had to save not others but myself. The next evening, their SUV returned from Helena. Megan flew into the house, radiant with success, with bags from boutiques. Aiden followed her with the air of a man in control of the situation. Ryan, honey, Megan pecked me on the cheek, fragrant with new perfume. You can't imagine how brilliantly the meeting went. The insurers are completely delighted with our modernization plans. Aiden is simply magical. We sat over documents all night, checking every detail. Everything went perfectly. They were impressed by our approach to safety, added Aiden, settling into my favorite chair. They've never seen such a comprehensive risk analysis. I believe it, I smiled, pouring whiskey into glasses. Speaking of safety, I was thinking. About what, dear? Megan froze by the kitchen island, and something in her voice made me inwardly alert. Tomorrow is the last day before the opening. I suggest we three walk the entire route of the new trail in the morning. Check each element, each fastening. I want to be confident in the safety before launch. No one but us could do it better. What do you say? Deathly silence fell. I almost physically felt the air in the room thicken with tension. Honey, Megan began, but Aiden interrupted her. Ryan, you're absolutely right. I appreciate your thoroughness, but let's be realistic. Tomorrow is a crazy day. A full tour would take at least 8 hours. We still have a mass of unresolved issues with documentation, safety system checks. Plus your wife and I barely slept yesterday. So we can't manage the entire route, I shrugged. But let's at least inspect the main section, roughly to the suspension bridge. What do you think? Aiden almost imperceptibly relaxed. Yes, that's reasonable. The main thing is to check the primary section. That's where the most intensive load and the greatest flow of visitors will be. Agreed, I saluted with my glass. We'll start at 8 in the morning, and don't forget full equipment in the mountains. You need to be prepared for anything. Of course, beloved, Megan smiled, but her fingers clutching the wine glass trembled slightly. Whatever you say. When they dispersed to their rooms, I stood for a long time by the window, gazing at the snow-covered peaks. Somewhere up there at altitude, the resolution of this story awaited me, and I knew exactly which section of the route we would be checking especially carefully tomorrow. Part 5. White Silence. The morning greeted us with a piercing wind and low, heavy clouds crawling over the mountain tops like gray predators stalking prey. I stood at the beginning of the new trail, checking equipment with the methodical precision of an experienced rescuer. Climbing carabiners, safety cables, radios, all like in the good old days in the Himalayas. A compact camera was discreetly attached to my chest, plus something special hidden in the inner pocket of my jacket, a little surprise for my loving companions. Damn cold, I rubbed my frozen hands, looking at the thermometer. -18, wind increasing. Perfect conditions for what I had in mind. Megan appeared first, impeccable in her designer ski suit, with light makeup, as if she was heading for a photo shoot for a glossy magazine rather than a technical inspection of a dangerous trail. Good morning, darling, she kissed me on the cheek. God, what a killing cold. Maybe we should postpone the inspection. Afraid of freezing, I smirked. Don't worry, soon it will get hot. What do you mean? Just that the weather might change, I shrugged, watching how nervously she adjusted the fasteners on her sleeves. I'm here. Aiden appeared as if from nowhere, as always collected and confident. Shall we start from the lower point and move up, to the bridge and then back as agreed? Of course, I patted his shoulder. The most interesting part is there. I noticed how Megan and Aiden exchanged glances. A quick, anxious look, like two predators sensing danger but not yet understanding where it's coming from. The first hour passed in routine inspection. Aiden preached about technical details with the aplomb of a university professor. Notice these fasteners. I strengthened them with additional connections. Now even the strongest storm isn't a threat. Everything here is reliable. Impressive, I nodded. And what's further beyond that turn? Nothing special, Aiden answered too hastily. Standard configuration. Still, let's check. I moved forward, since we're here. Ryan, Megan grabbed my sleeve. Maybe that's enough for today. I'm frozen to the bone. My fingers are completely numb. Bear with it, dear. There's very little left. I methodically led them to the designated point, to where, according to Aiden's drawings, weakened fasteners were installed, precisely in the place where the combination of height and exposure created maximum load on the structure. "You know what's most important in the mountains?" I asked casually as we approached the necessary spot. "The ability to read signs. Weather, snow, people, everything leaves traces. You just need to know how to interpret them." "What are you getting at?" Wariness appeared in Aiden's voice. "Oh, just reflections. By the way, look, what's that strange fastening? I've never seen anything like it." At that moment, a deafening roar sounded. A sound resembling the roar of a giant echoed through the gorge. Ice shards and small rocks showered from above. Aiden instantly assessed the situation. Ahead was a section weakened by him, behind, evidently, an approaching avalanche. A split second for reflection, a choice between two deaths. "This way," he shouted, pointing forward. Although his face contorted with the understanding, he was leading them straight to where he himself had prepared a trap. But the avalanche seemed more terrifying. Its roar increased, intensifying the panic. "Ryan, God, where to run?" Megan darted between us, her eyes widening with horror. "Forward, run forward." Aiden grabbed her hand, but not to pull her along. On the contrary, he gently pushed her. "Run first, I'm right behind you." Megan rushed forward onto the narrow platform. I froze, watching the unfolding drama. She didn't know exactly where the fasteners were weakened. Unlike Aiden, who, holding his breath, watched her every step. The structure was supposed to withstand the weight of one person. He had calculated everything, preparing the accident. But not two people simultaneously. Each of Megan's steps resonated with a slight vibration of metal, but the fasteners were holding so far. "Aiden," she turned around in the middle of the span. "What are you waiting for?" He hesitated, afraid to get too close to her to not increase the load. Snow fell more heavily, rocks crashed against the metal structures with a thud. There was no choice left. Cursing, Aiden stepped onto the platform. First step, second. The metal beneath his feet barely perceptibly flexed. "Faster," panic rang in Megan's voice. He had almost reached her when the first alarming creak sounded. That very sound of overstressed metal which he had probably imagined so many times, planning the accident. The structure couldn't withstand the weight of two people. "Damn back," he shouted, but it was too late. The right cable snapped first, exactly as he had planned when calculating the accident. The metallic singing was cut off by a sharp bang. Then, unable to withstand the doubled load, the left one cracked. The platform tilted, and at that moment Aiden began to look for me. Where was I? Here I was standing right where the first rocks had crumbled down. I hadn't run after them but stayed at a safe distance, and in my eyes he probably saw not fear but something akin to satisfaction. Why wasn't I scared of the avalanche? What was happening? "Oh my God, Ryan, help!" Megan cried out, clutching at a broken piece of railing. The ground fell away beneath their feet. They were falling into the abyss, and in these seconds, Aiden must have realized the monstrous irony of what was happening. He had fallen into his own trap. The victim who was supposed to provide millions became himself. But instead of a deadly impact against the rocks, there was the sound of sliding on snow. Approaching the edge, I saw how these two, caught by safety cables on the debris of the structure, were sliding down the steep slope straight toward a dark gap in the rock, the entrance to a natural ice cave. "God, no!" Megan's scream was cut short when the snow flow carried them into the darkness. I knew about this cave. It was marked on all maps as a dangerous zone. A deep crevice, descending at an angle into the mountain's thickness. Spacious enough to survive falling into it, but too treacherous to escape without outside help. I leisurely descended by rope to a small ledge by the cave entrance. "Hey, are you alive in there? Megan, are you all right?" I called into the darkness. "Yes, damn." Aiden's voice sounded muffled. "Megan is here, seems unhurt. Get us out of here, Ryan. It's hellishly cold in here. We won't last long." "Ryan, please." Tears rang in Megan's voice, but now they were real. "It's so dark and cold here. I can't feel my legs." "I'll organize a rescue now," I shouted, stepping back from the edge. I'm leaving and will return in a few hours with rescuers. Hang in there. Of course, I didn't really leave, but settled nearby, listening to how events would unfold inside the cave. The sounds from there clearly carried outside, as if from a gigantic megaphone. I didn't have to wait long. Soon panic broke out in the cave, first quiet curses, then increasingly loud accusations. "You damn idiot." Megan's voice was breaking. "This is all your fault. Your insane plan with a staged accident. How did you let us almost die? Why did you push me forward to where everything was supposed to collapse? Decided to get rid of me." "Shut up, bitch," snapped Aiden. "Your own snout is not clean. You think I don't know about your plans? Wanted to outsmart me, huh? Take all the money for yourself after getting the insurance. And you were counting on an honest split." Her laugh sounded hysterical. "God, you're so naive. The only one stupider than you is my hubby. Mom always said I have no luck with men." I settled more comfortably on a rock, taking a thermos of hot coffee from my backpack. Now there was no need to hurry. Let the cold and fear do their work. Let them draw out all the dirt, all the secret plans and betrayals. Let these two spiders in one jar destroy each other. And I'll wait. After all, I've been preparing for this day for a long time. Part 6, Echo of Truth. The sun dipped toward the horizon. The cold in the ice cave was becoming more and more unbearable. An hour had passed, maybe more, in the darkness. Time lost its meaning. Megan and Aiden, exhausted, huddled against each other, trying to preserve the remnants of heat, but the closeness, so desired just yesterday, now evoked only mutual disgust. Their breath condensed in the air, turning into frost crystals on their clothes. "Ryan, damn it, where is he?" Megan cried out once again, her voice breaking with despair. "Please, I can't feel my legs at all. We'll freeze to death here." The echo repeatedly multiplied her plea, breaking it into fragments and reflecting it off the icy walls. Somewhere deep in the cave, water dripped rhythmically, like a metronome counting time to the finale. Both were shaking from cold and fear. "Useless," Aiden hissed, rubbing his numb hands. "That bastard just left us here to die. I bet he knew everything from the very beginning. What irony, now he'll get the insurance." "Don't you dare," Megan turned sharply to him. "Don't you dare speak about him like that, if it weren't for your cursed scam." "My scam?" Aiden laughed bitterly. "As if you're an innocent lamb, and who forged documents, who pretended to be a loving wife." From above, where the twilight light marked the exit from the cave, my silhouette appeared. In my hands, I held climbing equipment. Ropes and carabiners gleamed in the last rays of the setting sun. "Good evening, I'm back. Though to be honest, I never left," my voice echoed through the cave. "What an informative discussion, almost familial. Continue, it's very interesting to observe your mutual exposure." "Ryan, thank God you're here. Honey," Megan leaned forward, her face distorted with pain, frozen muscles resisted movement. "I beg you, you're not like that. You've always been kind, noble." "Silence," cut her off Aiden. "You think your acting talents still work. He figured everything out long ago." "Absolutely right. I understood everything long before today, and I was ready for what would happen. What you took for an avalanche, Aiden, was just an explosion of a pyrotechnic device simulating a rockfall. You did the rest yourselves." I sat on the edge of the crevice, holding climbing equipment in my hands. "Now about the rescue. I have equipment for lifting, however, only one set. And do you know why? For the insurance, someone needs to stay here forever. But before deciding who gets saved, let's talk. We haven't had an honest conversation for so long. You seemed like a simpleton, a country bumpkin with a military pension, but you turned out to be a sick psychopath. Do you understand what you're proposing? What is there to talk about?" Aiden hissed through clenched teeth, but his voice already rang with undisguised fear. "Get us out of here, you sadist. What do you mean someone must stay here? Have you lost your mind?" "Now that's interesting." I turned on a powerful headlamp, directing the beam right into their faces. "Fear makes people sincere. Look, Megan, your lover is starting to panic. Yet this was his plan, so flawless, so thought out. All right, Ryan, all right, I'm guilty, I admit it, I lost. Aiden tried to give his voice firmness. But let's discuss this as men. You understand it's just business, nothing personal, that's how circumstances turned out. Now it's completely unnecessary for anyone to die. It's just money. Get me out and I'll compensate your losses. I have capital not as large as the insurance, but still. And Megan, she betrayed you. That's much worse than financial fraud. Think about it. Nothing personal, I laughed, and this sound, reflected many times over, filled the space of the cave. Seduce my wife, plan a catastrophe at my resort, steal my money. Is this what you call nothing personal? He's lying, Megan suddenly cried out. Ryan, listen. He manipulated me, used my weaknesses. I was such a fool. But I'm innocent. We've been together for so many years. And who is he? Just a scoundrel who nearly destroyed our marriage. Now I understand everything. Forgive me. You can't leave me to die here. I'm your wife. Her voice broke with a sob, so sincere that for a moment I felt a pang of doubt. But only for a moment. Darling, I shook my head. There's no need to be so upset. I saw your letter to your mother, remember? A very candid message. If my memory serves me right, in it you plan to first ruin me, get the insurance money, and then you had no intention of sharing with your lover. Isn't that right? Let's be frank, since we're having such an honest conversation. How are you any better than him? Megan froze, her eyes widening with horror. Aiden turned sharply to her. What letter? What does no intention of sharing mean? I didn't, she stammered, and suddenly her face transformed. The mask of a helpless victim slipped off, revealing a completely different expression, hard, calculating. Fine, she straightened up as much as the cave space allowed. You want the truth, Ryan? Yes, I planned the scam. Yes, I was going to deceive him. She jerked her head towards Aiden. And do you know why? He's just a tool, the perfect scapegoat. What? Aiden lurched towards her but slipped on the ice. Ryan, Megan's voice became businesslike, almost intimate. Think for yourself. All the evidence is against him. He designed the accident, he prepared the fasteners. His signatures are everywhere. If something happens to him now, it will look so natural. A criminal who died in his own trap. All responsibility on him. Zero suspicion on us. I get the insurance. We get the insurance, darling. Let's leave him here. You bitch, exhaled Aiden, ruthless witch, and I thought. What did you think, idiot? She turned to him, and steel rang in her voice. That you charmed a naive housewife, that I fell for your cheap tricks. Face the truth, you were always just a pawn. Ryan, she addressed me again, and her voice became soft, insinuating. We can still fix everything, right now. The insurance, the money, it will all be ours. Let's start over, just the two of us. And this con artist will get what he deserves. He's a criminal. No one will miss him. Give the equipment to me. God, Aiden laughed hoarsely, terribly. What a fool I was. And colleagues warned me, you play the infatuated one too well. Shut up, she almost spat out this word. Ryan, decide. Time is running out, it will be completely dark soon. One push and it will all be over. Think about the money, the future. We don't even have to do anything, just leave him alone. By morning he'll freeze. The future, I slowly stood up. You know what I'm thinking about the day I found you in a mountain crevasse. You were shivering from the cold, clinging to me like a savior, just like now. Was that a game too? No, something trembled in her voice. Not then. I really loved you, Ryan, but then. You were always busy with your resort, with your grandiose projects, and I wanted more, multi-million insurance, right away in one go. And for this more, you're ready to send a person to death. He's not a person, he's the same con artist as you, I quietly finished. I took out the radio. All posts, this is Everest calling the rescue team, and the sheriff. No, both captives of the ice cave cried in unison. Yes, I began to unwind the rope. I will save you both, because there are things more important than revenge. There are concepts of honor and justice. You won't understand this, but it doesn't matter. Ryan, For the first time, something genuine sounded in Megan's voice. I did love you. Once I really did love you. I know, that's why I'm saving you. But love and justice are different things, especially here in the mountains where everyone sooner or later shows their true face. I began to lower the equipment, and below in the cold darkness, two people looked at each other with hatred, gradually realizing that they had lost. Lost to someone they considered too simple and honest for their sophisticated intrigues, to someone who, in this ice cave, proved stronger than both of them. The rescue operation lasted almost 4 hours. I watched as professionals, whom I once trained myself, methodically extracted two half-frozen people from the ice cave. Megan didn't look at me, only at the ground, as if answers to some questions were written in the snow beneath her feet. When the sheriff arrived, the snow had already stopped falling. It seemed that nature itself wanted to witness the final act of this drama. Sheriff Sheffield, an old friend from mountaineering trips, silently listened to the recording from the cave. "Damn it, Ryan," was all he said, shaking his head. "How did you even survive?" I smiled grimly. "You know, in the mountains there's an unwritten rule: never underestimate your opponent, even if that opponent is your own wife." The trial took place 3 months later. The hall was packed: journalists, owners of neighboring resorts, locals. Everyone wanted to see the finale of the story that had shocked their quiet town. I sat in the front row, right behind my ex-wife. Her expensive perfume, which I once loved so much, now made me nauseous. Megan held herself excellently. She had always been a talented actress. She spoke of clouded judgment, of how Aiden had drawn her into the scam, how she had succumbed to momentary weakness. She cried, asked for forgiveness, but I could see her tears were as fake as our last years together. Aiden broke down. On the second day of the trial, he told everything about other resorts, about past scams, about how he and Megan had planned this one. His detailed testimony was the final nail in the coffin of their common grave. 18 years, announced the judge, for both, without the right to parole. As they were being led away, Megan finally turned to me. In her eyes was neither remorse nor love, only the cold fury of a cornered predator. A year passed. The Alpine Star Resort not only survived, it flourished. The story of the prevented tragedy made it a legendary place. People believed. A resort where truth triumphed over lies cannot be dangerous. Sometimes, standing at the very place where I once overheard their conversation, I recall the words an old Himalayan guide told me. In the mountains, a person always meets themselves. Back then, I didn't understand the profound meaning of this phrase. Now I do. The cold of betrayal leaves traces much deeper than the most severe mountain frost. But even from this cold, one can emerge stronger, wiser, truly free.